Good evening. We continue to cover breaking news out of the Scottsdale airport, where one person has died and several others have been injured after two private jets, a Gulfstream 200 and a Learjet 35A, collided earlier this afternoon.
And we're awaiting a press conference from officials there at the Scottsdale airport. But first, 12 News journalist Gabriella Becerra is there live. And Gabby, what have you learned?
Well, Mark Rebe, we're at the Aviation Business Center where we are waiting to hear from Scottsdale Fire and airport officials. They just walked in and said it'll be just a few minutes before we get that update. But at last check, we're told 5 people were involved in this crash. We know one person died instantly. 3 people were taken to the hospital with a range of injuries. And one person, again, at 4:30, was taken or was still needed to be extricated and reviewed for injuries. We're hoping to get an update on how that person is doing with the next update. But for now, we also know that a mid-size plane, upon landing, veered off the runway, crashing into another mid-size plane that was parked on private property. It's unclear at this time which passengers were aboard which plane. We're hoping we can get more information on that as well. This happened just after 2:45. We know dozens of crews responded to this. You can see from where I'm standing them just left of the control tower. And as we work to get more answers on this, we're hoping we can get more information on those injuries, but we'll toss it back to you guys for now.
Right. Gabby, thank you so much. They're live from the Scottsdale airport. We want to bring in 12 News journalist Bianca Bono. Bianca, you've been gathering some details on both of those aircraft, the one that was coming in for the landing that then hit another one that was parked.
Yes, so we'll start with the plane that was landing, the Learjet 35A. We've learned that that plane, according to FAA records, began its flight path today in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. It stopped in Austin, Texas, and then was landing here in Scottsdale, Arizona. According to records, that plane is owned by a company, and that's a company that is owned actually by Motley Crue frontman Vince Neil. We want to be clear, we don't know if Vince Neil was on board this plane. We have no information yet about who was involved, but we did want to pass that information along. The second plane, the plane that was struck essentially, that plane is actually a Gulfstream 200. We've learned via a statement that a company called Jet Pros owns that plane, and I believe we do have that statement there. We did receive the statement in the last couple of minutes by a spokesperson there. They said our plane, a Gulfstream G200 business jet, was parked on the ramp when it was hit by a Learjet 35 at around 2:45 local time. There were no injuries on board the Gulfstream, but external damages were sustained to the aircraft. We are cooperating fully with airport authorities and relevant agencies as they conduct a thorough review of the situation. They, of course, expressed their condolences to the family members of those affected by this accident today. So those, we believe, are the two planes that were at the center of this.
All right, Bianca, thank you.
All right, Chris Dunn not only is a terrific meteorologist, he's also a pilot, former commercial pilot. And you've been behind the controls before. I guess my first question is, as the pilot, once you have touched down, as the pilot of the Lear did, how much of the control is in your hands and how much of the control is in the hands of the tower?
Well, at that point, it's all about the pilot. Once they clear you to land, you own the runway, so it is yours to do with what you want. And there's an old saying in aviation that you never stop flying the airplane until it's tied down. So the wind sometimes plays tricks on the controls. You always have to be on the controls and ready for anything to happen.
So we know that the plane successfully touched down. It's what happened after it touched down that caused this accident. We know very limited details, and by the way, we're waiting for a press conference. We will take you to that press conference at Scottsdale Airport as soon as it happens, but we know that the plane veered once it landed. What, and this would be pure speculation on your part, but it's speculation by a trained pilot, what could have caused the plane to veer?
Well, some of the things that the investigators will be looking at are mechanical deficiencies or mechanical problems, such as the brakes failed. That could cause the airplane to veer off the runway. Maybe an engine thrust reverser could have failed and produced asymmetric thrust, which is more thrust on one side than the other. A tire could have blown out on the runway. We just don't know. These would be all factors that the NTSB investigators will be looking at for what is deemed as a loss of directional control on the runway surface causing it to depart from the landing surface and obviously have a collision with a parked aircraft off to the side.
And some clues to find out what happened could come from the chatter on air traffic control. Bianca, you've been looking into that.
Yep, in the past couple of minutes or so, we actually do have some of that audio, and we want to play a bit of that for you right now.
Aviator 47, start a climb, go around. Aviator 69, just fly straight out.
Flying straight out, Aviator 69.
Clear track 180, fly eastbound, please. Exit the airspace.
Fly eastbound, exit airspace, clear track 180.
Clear track 751, maintain pattern out, or I'm sorry, just maintain your altitude and enter a right base. Expect to go around. We need to pad an emergency.
All right, Chris. Okay,
you can
so
hear the
yes.
panic in that air traffic controller's voice, and you know, I was looking at this Learjet. This is an older aircraft. They stopped production in 1994.
Yeah.
And it's been involved, apparently, the 35A, in 25 fatalities over the years, 25 accidents that caused fatality. That could be anything. Payne Stewart was on a Learjet 35A, the pro golfer, who lost consciousness. The plane was on autopilot, if you remember, flew for hours on that. They sent jets up to look. They were, the pilot and presumably Payne Stewart were frozen because of there had been a leak on the plane.
Yeah, loss of pressurization, and I believe they crashed in a field somewhere in North Dakota, South Dakota. They were starting in Florida, and
so So my question is, with a plane that old at 94, and there are 500 some Learjet 35As still in service, could the age of that plane be a factor in this?
every single aircraft in the United States has to undergo an annual inspection. So in order to be considered airworthy. So if it's up there and it's flying, in theory, it has been has to undergo an annual inspection where they look at everything. They look at all the systems, all the components, and certain aircraft have components that they have to look at with a fine-tooth comb, like a borescope inspection of the engines every 500 hours or so, or the FAA will put limits on those.
So presumably any plane that's in the air, whether it's old like a Learjet 35A or it's newer plane like the Gulfstream 200, would have the same efficiency, mechanical efficiency, or they're not allowed to fly.
Well, and that is also up to the mechanics that inspect and sign off on those inspections. But yes, the same amount of scrutiny goes into every one of those inspections. For example, when I was doing flight training and I was training students, we flew airplanes that were 50, almost 60 years old. And at first glance, you might say, I wouldn't want to go up in one of those. But it is inspected very thoroughly and deemed to be safe. And I'm still here. So
Right.
Yeah, well, that's good.
They were, yes.
That's good to hear.
Chris, I know you just heard the air traffic control communication for the first time right here on the air. Is there anything that stood out to you about what you heard?
It sounded like there were two training aircraft in the pattern. Career Track and Aviator are two of the call signs for large flight schools in the area.
Okay.
So they were training, they were probably doing touch and goes. And the tower was just trying to get them out of the area and not involved. Expect to go around. You're not going to land here. Okay. Basically, they were saying, without saying, that the airport is closed, and we gotta deal with this right now.
Okay, so it didn't really give us any clues into how that accident happened. Just the after communication with the other aircraft.
Exactly.
Okay. All right.
All right, and we're going to the press conference at any moment, so I don't want to cut you off. Okay, we're going to go to it right now. This is the press conference talking about the accident this afternoon at Scottsdale Airport.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Gary Mascaro. I'm the aviation director here at the Scottsdale Airport. I wanted to just let you know about our incident. I'm going to hand it off to two professionals to provide you some more details. On behalf of the city of Scottsdale, the Scottsdale Airport, our thoughts and prayers for the individuals on the aircraft. It's certainly a tragedy that occurred. The fire department, the police department, airport operations did a fantastic job responding to the incident immediately. foaming down the aircraft to prevent additional fire, to protect the property and the lives of the interested parties, as well as folks around the facility that occurred. I'm going to introduce you to Kelly Keister. She's our public information officer. That's going to provide some more specific detail by airport operations, and then we'll hand it off to Dave Folio. He is the PIO for the Scottsdale Fire Department to provide you additional information as well. Thank you.
Again, thank you everyone for your patience and for being here with us this evening. As a lot of you may already know, but I just want to confirm the details of what happened today. At 14:39, a Learjet aircraft on its arrival from Austin veered off the runway and collided with another jet, a Gulfstream 200 aircraft that was parked. It appears that the left main gear failed upon landing, resulting in the accident. The National Transportation Safety Board is on scene. They will be taking over the investigation at this point. The runway remains closed at this time. Any additional information we have about when our reopening will be shared as soon as possible. And now I'd like to turn over to Dave Folio. Thank you.
I'm Captain Dave Folio with the City of Scottsdale Fire Department, Public Information Officer. We're currently at Scottsdale Airpark. That's 14960 North 78th Way. At 14:39 today, we received Alert 3 at our Scottsdale Station 609. That's our fire station here on the airport. And Foam 609 responded. In 14:40, 1 minute later, Foam 609 arrived on scene. And as stated, a small jet into another larger jet. We, upon Alert 3, that's basically a first alarm assignment for us. So we have Glendale Fire, Phoenix Fire, and Scottsdale Fire that all responded to this scene to assist us. We had 5 patients we treated. 1 was a fatality. We had 2 immediates that were transported to local trauma centers. We had 1 delayed patient and then 1 patient that refused treatment. We brought in additional hazmat units to clear the buildings, surrounding buildings, and get an all clear in those structures. And they also metered those structures and got 0 readings in those structures. I won't be answering any additional questions, and our thoughts and prayers from the City of Scottsdale, the Scottsdale Fire Department, and then the Scottsdale Police Department go out to everybody involved in this. Thank you. No, that wasn't the refusal. That was an immediate transported to a local trauma center in critical condition.
So no one is left on either of the planes?
We have 1 fatality still in one of the planes. They were dead on arrival. Thank you.
All right, you've been listening to this.
We're not going to go into specifics. We're going to turn this over to the National Transportation Safety Board of what patients were in what planes. All right, thank you guys.
Captain Dave Folio with Scottsdale Fire. I'll tell you, over the last 3 weeks, if you are squeamish about flying, this doesn't help because this has already made national news. Probably because of the rash of accidents that we've seen lately. But Chris, if you're just tuning in, not only our meteorologist, but a pilot, an accomplished pilot with many, many hours. Upon landing, which can be very hairy on a good day, you're hitting the runway and then your landing gear fails, which they just pointed out.
Right.
There was a failure of the landing gear which caused the plane to veer off to the left and slam into the Gulf Stream. At that point, as a pilot, what are you trained to do if your landing gear fails?
You know, there's not much that we put into training as far as a landing gear fails. You try to do your best to maintain control. The only control that you might have at that point is with the rudder and enough airflow over the rudder to have any small bit of directional control. Or if you have nose wheel steering, you might have a little bit of control that way. But if you're coming in at that high rate of speed, at the landing speed that a Learjet is landing, and the left main collapses, that's going to put that wing down on the ground, and you're going to violently veer off to the side.
So it would be like if you're on the 101 and you're going 75 or 80 miles an hour and you blow your left front tire.
probably even worse than that.
Obviously, because you're going faster, but I mean,
Yeah.
the same sort of a thing. You're just sort of a helpless passenger at that point.
Yeah, and then some, because not only would you lose the tire, but you lose the entire landing gear mechanism. It sounds like it collapsed or it failed, so that whole side of the airplane, boom, falls to the ground.
Wow.
The wingtip would be scraping on the runway surface, and it would violently turn off to the left side.
All right. I want to bring in 12 News journalist Bianca Bono. Bianca, you've been you've been keeping track of the owners of these aircraft. Have you received any statements from them?
We have. So just to recap, the plane that we keep showing you there that's white, it looks like it has some flames on the edge. That is the Learjet plane. That was the plane that they just mentioned was flying in from Austin, previously came from Fort Lauderdale. That plane, the registered owner is a company called Chromed in Hollywood, Inc. The owner of that company is Vince Neil, the frontman of Motley Crue. Again, we just want to be abundantly clear that we don't know if Vince Neil was on that plane today, but he is the owner of that plane. The second plane, the Gulfstream, is owned by a company called Jet Pros. According to their website, it appears they have a number of services they offer, including chartering out private planes to folks. We do have a statement from Jet Pros. We'll read part of it for you. It says, our plane, a Gulfstream 200 business jet, was parked on the ramp when it was hit by a Learjet 35 at around 2:45 p.m. local time. There were no injuries on board the Gulfstream, but external damages were sustained to the aircraft. And I believe they said they're cooperating with airport authorities and, of course, express their condolences to those involved. But that clears that up, that there were no injuries on that Gulfstream.
All right, Bianca, thank you for that.
And Chris, thank you for your insight and expertise. I hate the fact that we're relying on you for this, because it says that not only are we asking you to cover weather, but we're asking you to cover tragedies.
And in the second time in just a matter of a week or so, a couple of weeks.
And sometimes it's just coincidence that a string of these things happen, because we've had a long string of safe days and years in the airline industry.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll talk to you about maybe some rain moving in a little bit later. All right,
Will do.
Chris, thank you. Bianca, thanks.